Good evening, Council. It's 5 o'clock and we'll come to order. Today we acknowledge that this event is taking place on the traditional territory of the Indigenous peoples of Turtle Island. We are thankful to share in the special spirit of this place, rich in the energy of Mother Earth, our ancestors, and the love of all creation. With that, I'll call Council to order. Who would have the adoption of the agenda? Councillor McLeod?
I do. Mr. Chair, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Berman, be it resolved that the content of the Council agenda for November 13, 2019 be adopted as presented.
Any questions before I call the vote? Voting in the affirmative? That's carried. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest?
I have one.
Councillor McLeod?
I will be declaring a pecuniary interest in part of item 10.1.2, which is the discussion regarding procedural bylaw. As happened at the Strategic Initiatives Committee, which preceded this meeting, I'll be asking for the motion to be severed, and I'll leave the room during that time.
Fair enough, thank you. And as we proceed, if you find yourself in a conflict, please act accordingly. With that said, then we will move on to the adoption of the minutes from the October 28th Council meeting. Councillor McLeod.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Berman, be it resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of Council held October 28th, 2019 be approved as presented.
Any questions before I call the vote? Okay, those voting in the affirmative? Thank you, and that's carried unanimously. Community announcements. Again, Councillor McLeod.
Santa Claus is coming to town this weekend. As a matter of fact, dozens and dozens of Santa Clauses are coming to town as part of the 5K Ho-Ho holiday, 5K on the streets and trails through town. That'll be starting and ending at 2nd and Pine Streets. There's a garden there with some refreshments, some of them adult nature, and there's a festival area as well. And at 5 o'clock in the evening, the Santa Claus parade will be held in the dark, and immediately at its ending we'll be having our annual tree lighting and fireworks, all of that taking place, I think, at the Federal Building. And I would like to invite anyone who wants to join me in the Ho-Ho Holiday 5K to lope along with me, because I'm not a very fast runner.
Good, thank you. Councillor Comey.
Thank you. I hope it is a Santa Claus parade this weekend, because my garage looks like the Macy's Day Parade staging area. So I'm relieved to hear that Saturday. It's also Canada Music Week, and each year from coast to coast, Canadians celebrate music and music education. The Georgian Triangle Music Teachers Association participates every year with the Student Showcase recital. This Friday, November 15th, there will be a recital beginning at 7 at First Presbyterian Church on Maple Street. Free will offering accepted. Thank you.
It's the float for the paddle club.
It is.
Is it?
Indeed. Yeah,
Nice.
very exciting.
Okay. Councillor Matthew.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. It would be remiss if I didn't mention anything about the Georgian Triangle Humane Society. Wednesday, December 4th, 3 till 6 p.m. on the 10th line. They invite everyone and their family to celebrate another fantastic, successful year in animal welfare. The staff will be offering festive treats, tours of the facility, including their new animal hospital, opportunities to meet adorable animals, and a chance to meet the team, and of course holiday cheer, so bring the whole family out. They can't wait to see you. And I know it's late in the month, but it is November, so if people are wondering of why I've got this disgusting dirty stash that I cannot wear as powerful as the handsome man, Mr. Parr, across the table, it is for awareness of prostate cancer, testicular cancer, and men's suicide. So if you see somebody that doesn't usually have a mustache and they ask for a donation, please give it to them. It's just bringing awareness of a horrible disease that affects us all on many levels. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Doherty.
I have nothing this evening, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Berman. I have nothing this evening. Thanks, Debbie. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Your Deputy Worship. I would just like to announce or give word to the Collingwood Colts Gala, November 23rd at the Collingwood Legion from 7 p.m. And given our other community announcement from the public, I thought it would be good to put that out there, and hopefully people will buy tickets for the gala.
Right. Thank you. And Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Deputy Mayor. I have two things I wanted to mention this evening. One is an event, a community event, I'll call it, for youth, which we don't hear much about around this table, so I'm just going to take a minute. Arising out of the day that our Business Enterprise Center had a couple of months ago, and Robert Bernard came and talked about youthful cities. A couple of gentlemen in our community approached me about setting up, or how could we set up a youth advisory board that could interact with council. And coming out of that meeting with three, it became a meeting of 10, and it's gone on and on. Anyway, I just want to announce that our Collingwood Youth Centre is creating their own youth advisory board, and they're proceeding now to elect a chair and a vice chair. And for any of those youth out there who might be interested, they should contact the Collingwood Youth Centre. And then in the fullness of time, which I expect will be sooner than later, I think we'll be having regular meetings with our youth because they're looking for a platform and a place for their voice to be heard. Okay, so the second thing is just to say also on Saturday, November the 23rd, there's going to be an event at the Simcoe Street Theatre called Social Innovation. What is it and why now? And it's during the day, and the keynote speaker is Tonya Sermon, who's the CEO for Social Innovation in Toronto, which is an amazing center. And I'm not going to spend any of my time talking about it. I encourage people to Google Social Innovation Center Toronto. And there will be a panel that will include Gillian Farley, who's the general manager for our own Center for Business and Economic Development, and several other people like Pam Hillier, who are involved, of course, in the community building there at High in Campbell. Okay, that was all. Thank you.
That's great. That does look like a fantastic event. And again, the date of that particular, it's a Saturday, that's correct?
Yeah, the 23rd. It's a week this Saturday.
Fantastic, thank you. I just wanted to, first of all, welcome and welcome to those who are watching at home or live stream, etc. I'd like to thank all members of council who were able to attend Remembrance Day services at the Cenotaph on Monday. Despite the weather, it was extremely well. It was a fantastic turnout, and it was a really a nice ceremony, and it was a tremendous honor. I'd like to certainly acknowledge there were two youth in particular, Avery Whalen and Reed McLeod, who are from Mountain View Public School. They had the honor this year of representing the youth of our community in laying a wreath, and did a great job. They were accompanied by a young woman by the name of Megan McNabb, who is with the Royal Canadian Army Cadet 1909 of Collingwood, and so they did an excellent job in that respect. Saturday night, myself and Councillor McLeod, Councillor Berman, we had an opportunity. We attended the Royal Canadian Legion's annual Remembrance Day dinner, and again, that's put on by the Lady Auxiliary of the Legion, and they did a fantastic job. Well attended. The pipes and drums were there, and it was a great evening. And we were pleased to have our neighbor, Mayor Bifolchi of Wasaga Beach, join us, as well as our representatives from the province and well, let me start over again. From the federal level. So how about I just say Mr. Wilson and Mr. Doddle? That would keep you out of trouble. Anyway, and lastly, if you had a chance to see it, it was a nice job and a very nice tribute. The same school, Mountain View Public School, under the direction of grade 7 teacher, Mr. Jeff Larmer, they were the ones that put together the exhibit in Town Hall outside. The exhibit was twofold. One, it was the honor roll for those who paid the ultimate sacrifice from the town of Collingwood, and then part of it was a tribute to the significant role that women played during the wars and the war effort, both home and abroad, and so that was a nice tribute. For those that don't know, when I was 10 years old, Jeff Larmer was a star hockey player for the Kitchener Rangers, and in fact in 81-82, they won the Memorial Cup, and the Memorial Cup, of course, is in honor of our veterans, and so he was my hero when I was 10 years old. Now he's a grade 7 teacher here in Collingwood, and with that, I am going to end, and I'm going to segue from talking about my youth hero, Mr. Larmer, and invite Mr. David Steele, who is the president and owner of the Collingwood Colts, to come to the podium and to give a presentation. And if I may, Mr. Steele, with you in the audience, you've got maybe one of our best ambassadors, one of our best hockey fans, and to your point, Councillor Hamlin, about the youth, a true champion in the youth. If I remember correctly, it was your council, maybe the last council that had a youth mayor
That's right.
program.
Exactly.
So maybe something worth looking at bringing back. So
Thank you.
with that, Mr. Steele, welcome.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Hall.
Perfect.
Thank you very much for having me, all of the councillors. I appreciate your time tonight. I'm certain you have a lot of pressing issues that you have to deal with, and I respect your time, and I'll be brief and welcome any questions you may have in regards to our little hockey team here in Collingwood. I want to start off by saying last time I was in this room was a little bit more tense than it is now. However, that being said, I want to talk about some of the promises made and some of the promises that have been fulfilled by our hockey club thus far in the first quarter of our inaugural season. I'm going to start in community because that's most important to me in my hockey club is community. First of all, I want to thank everybody that has been out to a game and supported us because that's very important to us, but also just thank you for allowing us to be your hockey team in town because it's been a wonderful experience for myself and my family throughout the process. In the community, we've my commitment to the community was that I would always pick up my phone. I just answer if people have questions or they're looking for help. If we have a resource that we can provide, it's something that I made a commitment to do, and honestly, to this day, we have answered all calls made and all requests made to us in some degree or another, whether it be my friend's house was supplying food and allowing them to free up some of their budget for more counseling and work with the people that utilize their services. Group Horizons in the same particular fashion. Hospice, Campbell House being involved with some funds raising through minor hockey with our hockey team here in town. Building garden boxes for community gardens, having my players come do some of the heavy lifting and labor, which they loved. We also attended the Georgian Triangle, it's not SPCA, it's your
Georgian Triangle Humane Society.
we were there on the mountain, we were marching with everybody that day, and it was a great point for us, and we donated some money to that organization through some of our foundation money that we're raising through the games. There's lots. Giving out poppies, so you may have been around town and seen the odd hockey player with selling poppies, and we became very involved with the Legion upon request. Also bought a wreath from the Legion ourselves as a hockey club. Talking about the Toth family, a family that reached out to us last summer. They had a young man about, I think he'd be about 12 or 13 years old. They couldn't afford to send him to an opportunity to play in Europe on a special game, and we ended up donating from the organization directly to that family to get that kid over to Europe and have that experience and then come back to Collingwood and talk about it because it's an exciting thing for any young man to go through. Finn Murphy. A lot of people have heard about Finn, who's been battling cystic fibrosis since he was born. His mother works at our hospital here in town and was very burdened by bills and responsibility to help keep her son alive. And it's a very bad disease. And we went to work with the family, and we managed to. The goal was $15,000 to buy him an apparatus to help him breathe. It's a vest. It's a medical device out of the U.S. that's experimental. We ended up, by the end of the whole process, raising close to $30,000 for this family. So his mother doesn't have to take as many shifts at the hospital to try and pay for some experimental drugs and that sort of thing. And it's something that we're very passionate about in this hockey club, is making sure that if we're contacted by community, and community to me means organizations or people, because not everybody donates to people. We'll donate to people from the Colts because we believe in the story, not the bureaucracy of whatever happens in fundraisers. and we'll continue to do that moving forward. So I thought I'd start with talking about that before I get to the smaller things like how the team's doing and how things are going. The team's doing great. It's been an overwhelming experience for myself and my family, but rewarding every step of the way, whether it be meeting great people in the community, sponsors, going to these community events, working with kids like Finn, working with boys and girls minor hockey. We have a tremendous executive which includes members from the Minor Hockey Association, so whatever their needs are or their thoughts on hockey, we want to be involved and we want to listen to that and work with them, support them with whatever. So being so close with them and our executive helps a great deal in terms of the relationship and where we're going with the whole rebrand and all that sort of stuff. It's all big stuff that we are supportive in. We offer seats in every game for organizations such as Big Brothers and Sisters. We offer seats for all minor hockey teams to have an opportunity to come sit in our cold seats, and we provide them with popcorn and some drinks and stuff like that so they can feel part of a junior A experience even if they can't afford it or their family can't. I think we've given somewhere in the ballpark of around 400 tickets away to date. Towards needy causes, and that's again anybody that contacts us. So if you do, as counselors, come across families in need, send them our way. We will open our doors and we will ensure that everybody has an opportunity to enjoy a hockey game. Performance, how's the team performing? Well, we're in first place in our division, which is pretty exciting for me, being an inaugural season and putting a team together essentially in 3 to 4 months. There's a lot of people in the hockey world that have come to us and said, how'd you do that? I'm like, well, we just worked really, really hard and we have a good community backing us, because when I brought players to Collingwood and I showed them what we have here in our beautiful arena with such history, it's not a hard sell to have a player come from elsewhere. But let's talk about the players right here from the community that we have signed. Is anybody familiar with Humboldt Broncos? Okay, very tragic event happened, but they're in our league. They're in the CJHL team. This year, they have one player that represents Humboldt, okay? Currently, we have 7 in Collingwood that are either from Collingwood or played Collingwood minor hockey. That's including our affiliates. We have 3 players signed, and we have an additional 4 players that are affiliated already with us, and we're still logging our affiliations. So I did a little research just to kind of keep it in perspective. Out of all the towns that we play in our division, we have the most local players playing for Collingwood, and we're in first place, which affirms my belief that this is a hockey town, and this hockey town has accepted us, and we've accepted them just as hard back. So, one more thought, we are also bringing into the community some pretty cool hockey celebrities. In our gala that you mentioned, Councillor Jeffrey, we're bringing in Nick Kiprios, who is also, this gala was organized and spearheaded by former Mayor Terry Geddes, who's here with us tonight. And it will be a successful night because we're well over half sold on the event. There's always a fundraising aspect to these things we do, but there is also a cost to development of players. And we want to ensure that we have that balance. And again, bringing in Nick, and then on December 3rd, we will be bringing in this guy named Daryl Sittler. I don't know if you know him. He might have played for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Deputy Mayor and I don't like the Toronto Maple Leafs, but that's okay. We're Habs fans, but in the end of the day, we're trying to bring celebrities. I'd love to have more people come in and create the environment and entertainment that the community deserves when they're paying for a ticket as well. In closing, I am here to answer any questions you may have, and I just want to say thank you very much for your time.
Well, that's great. Mr. Steele, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for coming tonight. I know that the community, generally speaking, has embraced the Colts and are excited to have Junior A back in Collingwood. And I also, just on behalf of the corporation and our staff, want to thank you for the relationship that you've developed with our staff and ensuring that we've got a facility that we can be proud of, that is open to everyone and is first class. And I know that certainly as somebody who's been involved with minor hockey through my own children, and having an opportunity to go elsewhere and come back and to see the investment in terms of what you've put into the building itself, it really is quite a facility for a minor, well, for a junior A, but for minor hockey as well. So thank you very much. Anybody around the table have any questions for Councillor Madigan?
Thank you, Mr. Steele. I was in the room the last time you were here when it was a little bit more stressful for you. I thought you did a great job that night. Your ongoing and continuous support to your new adopted community is outstanding and first class. And as I said, I was sitting here when you made your promises and you've kept them. So thank you very much for doing that. And you brought a winning team, which is outstanding. That makes it a little bit easier to smile being in first place. So thank you again, and keep up the good work.
Very much.
Great. Councillor McLeod?
Thank you for coming to see us. My question for you, actually before I get to that, a comment sort of to build on what the Deputy Mayor had to say regarding Terry Geddes in our audience. The last time he was here was pretty stressful for him also, and it's lovely to see that friendships have been created and relationships created. And speaking of relationships, could you, I've heard some rumors around town about some things, and I wonder if you might be able to clear up some of what's going on regarding you guys and the Barrie Colts.
It's a great question. In every business relationship, especially with a club like the Barrie Colts, which is a pretty big monster in Simcoe County, there's going to be relationships and negotiations. And right now, honestly, we're in negotiations with the brand, with Howie, and that's where it stands. From the very start with Howie, it's been a negotiation, and there's been no real decision made or anything as to what his involvement is with the Colts, whether it's just brand or an affiliation relationship. But rest assured, the Collingwood Colts, which is owned by myself, is sound, and we're functioning and we're operational, and there's no harm that can come to us through any negotiations through brand.
And follow up if I
Please.
may. So I remember the day that you and Mr. Campbell were here, there was discussion about players moving from team to team. Is that still a possibility, or is that not happening any longer?
It's happening currently. Like Mateo Alama is, we've been informed, is going to be going up to play a few games. I guess their Lafian Golia is going to be playing in the World Juniors, and they would require Mateo as a starting third goalie for the Barrie Colts to go up. Vladimir, who plays for us, Dorcheski, if I get it right, he practices every week with the Colts. We have acquired Peyton Shalia, Barrie draft pick. We had Derek Sweeney, a Barrie draft pick, and there's a third one. We have a good relationship in terms of the hockey side and the affiliation with the Barrie Colts, and it's working very well. And we've been asked by a few other teams in the major OHL how that relationship's working. A lot of people in Ontario in the hockey world are looking how this is working. It's kind of a prototype for future moves in terms of Tier 2 and Major Junior A.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions? Councillor Doherty?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming and giving us such a happy update. And this question through you may be better directed to Director Colbert, but now that the facility is being used more regularly, we have had some input from residents that there is concern about inconsistent food services available at the Eddie Bush. And I'm wondering if we could speak to that. What is the issue, and what would it take for us to have consistent food service at Eddie Bush?
Well, the one thing I would maybe preface with that comment is that prior to the Colts arriving, we've had an issue with concessions, period, both at the Eddie Bush as well as since the opening of the arena over at Central Park. There was a contract that was actually signed with a local vendor And there were some fulfillment issues, and that contract has lapsed and is no longer in place. I know that this past weekend, for example, when we had Silver Sticks back for this coming weekend, through, I think it's the Collingwood Youth Centre, they had a program that was set up to run the catering over at Central Park. The facility here wasn't open at Eddie Bush, but of course, one of the challenges with the facility here at Eddie Bush has been that with the proximity to local restaurants on the main street, the brand of Tim Hortons being a big one, of course, that it's tough to compete with that. So that's been sort of part of the issue. But other than that, I don't know if through you, maybe to Director Culver, if you can add to that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think you've kind of covered off, by and large, the challenge. Food services in any operation require some sort of profit opportunity, and unfortunately, in most of the most circumstances, the profit just doesn't exist. So if the municipality runs it on its own, we'd be taking the losses. Contractors in the past have taken the losses. Until you have an entity like a junior team that sort of drives business, those concessions struggle. And I think sort of, you know, in our situation at Central Park, for example, we've also taken a healthy food approach, not encouraging, you know, vendors coming in and providing, say, inexpensive French fries, because that is not encouraging the healthy lifestyle that we're trying to promote. But we do work with vendors to provide services as much as possible.
Thank you. The other thing I would maybe just add, and this is not necessarily related to food and beverage, is just simply that you know, we've actually got a great problem within our community, and that is that, and heaven forbid we actually even have this conversation, but we could use additional ice. We're running at max capacity, and I do spend a lot of time at the arenas. Not that to say that I don't have other interests and don't do other things, but that does be a topic of conversation. And we've had to make changes, for example, in terms of our scheduling. We've had some issues that are being addressed with minor hockey, so it relates to time limits, those types of things. The only reason I raise it is because although it's a bit of an issue, it's a growing pain, and it's a growing pain because we've got a great problem. The great problem is that we've got a lot of user groups that want to use the two surfaces that we have. And the positive is that, to my understanding, is that the groups that are involved, whether it be our figure skating, whether it be the Colts, whether it be minor hockey, whether it be adult leagues, etc., are working with our municipal partner. They're working with PRC through Director Culver to collaboratively come up with some solutions. So that's sort of addressing a different issue, but the point being is that with this new operation, we've had some growing pains, which is a positive thing because, you know, we're in demand in that respect. Anyway, I don't know if I've answered your question, but Mr. Steele, yes.
We were approached by minor hockey to open our concessions, the Colt concessions or the Eddie Bush concessions for the Huronia tournament. And I can attest to that. We made no money. We lost a lot of money opening up the concessions. It happens just that the location, people just leave to eat instead of having a hot dog or buying something locally. We have opened or given use of all of our equipment to other groups that are going in for no charge as well. If they want to use it, then all I ask is that they fix it if they break it, more or less. We did that through the Shipwreck tournament, which is an adult league tournament that happened a few weeks ago. So they came in, they used everything of ours as long as it was returned, and it was, I'm pleased to say. And that's essentially our relationship in terms of concessions at the Eddie Bush.
Councilor Berman.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to Mr. Steele, a loaded question. How's the attendance been, both as a franchise and compared to other cities?
Right on my list here, I forgot to mention. The attendance is excellent. We're 21% above the next team in our league in attendance, which is Trenton Golden Hawks, which generally have had one of the most successful long-term franchises in the province. So if that lends itself to what the future holds for the Collingwood Colts, I'm very optimistic. We're in at 765, I believe, average for attendance. It helps when we start at close to 500 and change in season ticket holders, which is generally more than most teams will gate in a year. But again, it all, in my opinion, it all is because of a great executive with people like Terry Geddes and minor hockey presidents and business people in town. The amount of events we do with the community brings people to us as well. So if you're doing one, you get the other, and that's what I attribute to our success in attendance.
Very good. Any other questions? Okay. Well, from a branding standpoint, I love your branding. I love the uniform. I love the Charlie horse with the C going the other way. But if it doesn't work out, Collingwood Canadians is still available. Those that don't know.
For the record, it will not be the Collingwood Leafs. So.
Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Steele and Mayor Geddes, for being here this evening. And you're welcome to stay, you're welcome to leave. So thank you again. Okay, with that, we have no public meetings and we have no deputations. So then we are moving to the consent agenda. And who would have that for us tonight? Councillor Comey.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Moved by me, seconded by Councillor Doherty. Be it resolved that the general consent agenda, having been given due consideration by council, be received. And those are items 8.1 through 8.5.
Thank you. So I'll call the question to receive the items, and then I'll ask if anyone wishes to have anything pulled for discussion. So those voting in the affirmative to receive, that's carried unanimously. Would anybody like to pull anything for discussion? Councillor McLeod?
Items 8.1 and 8.4, please.
Anyone else? Okay, 8.1.
I'm actually, if it's all right with you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I'd like to sort of join these two together. Those of us who have read through our agendas will notice that they are diametrically opposed sentiments contained within these letters. And I will be, just to bring your attention, I'll be bringing a notice of motion in a similar vein to one of them later this evening, and I'll leave you on tenterhooks for that.
Okay, well, on that note, we will then move from the consent agenda to point 9 of our agenda, reports and minutes of other committees and boards. Who would have that? Councillor Madigan?
No. The SIC stuff.
Or is this Councillor Berman?
The library board?
Yes.
I would have that, Deputy Mayor. Moved by me, seconded by Councillor McLeod. Be it resolved that Council receive the Collingwood Public Library Board minutes of October 24th, 2019 as presented.
Are there any questions before I call the vote? Yes, Councillor Doherty.
Thank you very much. And this question, I may need to address this to Director Skinner. There is a note within the minutes referencing an inclination to hire a Canada Post service to pick up books that would be shared with other community libraries. As I understand it, the current habit is that staff will take the books over to our local post office physically, so walk them over. And so based on the fact that we have passed a declaration of a climate emergency based on our commitment in general to more green operations, it seems to me that this would fly in the face of that, in that we are going to be paying for, so adding to operation cost for a service that would necessarily be contributing to greenhouse gases, because I would assume that this is a truck or a vehicle. And I just wanted to understand what the rationale was for that, and even if it could be perhaps reconsidered. It is also an opportunity for staff just to leave and get out and get some fresh air and come right back.
Okay, so you're referring to 6.1,
Yes.
and I'm going to go through the CAO to the appropriate staff member, and then also you're okay? All right. So do you have a comment?
Sure, thank you. Through you to Councillor Doherty. I mean, I'll have to talk to the Chief Librarian, Ken, about what the genesis is for this and the rationale for doing this before I respond. So I'll take it under advisement and I'll get back to you and others through an email after I speak to the CEO.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So that's been noted, so that's good now?
Yes, that's great. Thank
Okay.
you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so with that said, I have it moved by Councillor Berman and seconded by Councillor McLeod. So all those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so now we are moving on to the Strategic Initiative Standing Committee meeting from October the 31st. I have these. For those who are in the audience or who are watching at home, the next, if you're looking at your agenda, it runs from page 35 all the way through to page 164. And the reason I simply bring that to your attention is that this was a meeting that happened on the 31st over at the Legion. It was a lengthy meeting. It started at about 9 o'clock and went through to just shy of 3. There was lengthy discussion regarding these issues. So if the appearance tonight here at Council is that we're kind of moving through these fairly quickly, it's not the case. These have already been vetted and well discussed at that meeting on the 31st. So, okay, so number one, and that is moved by me and seconded by Councillor Berman. Whereas the Strategic Initiative Standing Committee supports staff undertaking a public consultation prior to the final consideration of the process and next steps toward a decision on the grain terminals, be it resolved that staff CC 2019-01 grain terminals next steps proposed white paper for public input be received and public consultation move forward as identified in the report, and that the public consultation and assessment of the timber foundation to be undertaken during the public consultation period at an upset limit of $30,000, and that staff review if additional information can be provided on the combined disposal facility. Are there any questions on this particular matter? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. Those in favor? That's carried unanimously. And the only thing that I will ask is, Councillor McLeod, please don't let me forget when we get to your peculiar interest. Okay. So the next one here, moved by me, seconded by Councillor Berman. Be it resolved that staff report C 2019-06 be received, including the recommendations to the proposed amendments to the procedural bylaw contained herein, and that Council approve the recommendations of the Strategic Initiative Standing Committee from its meeting held October the 31st, 2019, and that a bylaw be enacted and passed to amend the procedural bylaw as provided in Appendix B to this report, and that Council approve the alternative meeting schedule, Option 2, recommendation with such changes to the meeting schedule to take effect January 1, 2020. Are there any questions before I call the vote? So would you like to deal with this one first, is that what you're saying, or just do this one as amendments? Okay. All right. So we're going to pull this separately then.
Okay,
So I'm
great.
going to ask you to.
Super.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. That work? Great. Okay. So if you recall, on the 31st, Councillor McLeod excused herself because of the pecuniary interest. She's doing the same this evening. And we've pulled this. This was separated from the original motion that day. So this one is, again, moved by me, seconded by Councillor Berman. Be it resolved that no member of council shall receive a stipend, remuneration, or compensation for any committee or board that they are a council-appointed member on, unless otherwise authorized by the CAO, Chief Administrative Officer. Such compensation authorized by the CAO shall be reported in an annual remuneration report. If payment is required to be provided and not authorized by the CAO, those funds shall go into general revenues and will form the basis of funds available for council grants and donations. Travel expenses shall be exempt from this provision. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? That's carried unanimously. And if we could ask Councillor McLeod to return. Okay, thank you. So I am not rereading this. This is the one that I had just read prior. So if there are no questions, does anybody have any questions? Sorry, yes. Councillor Hamilton.
I have yes, questions about two of the items that are part of the procedural bylaw.
Okay.
Is this the time to raise those?
Please.
Okay. So the first one was with respect to notice of meetings. And I'm referencing particularly at our agenda at page 64. I had raised at our SIC meeting the possibility of, I think I put it, having an agenda package delivered to council for in-camera meetings at the same time as we get the agenda for the regular council meeting. And that did not find favor with council. And I have thought about what was wrong with what I brought forward, and I wanted to have the opportunity to put forward a slightly different suggestion on this. So where I'm coming from on this is having some idea of what we're going to be discussing in camera before the meeting. And I thought the words of the staff report at the bottom of page 65 put it well. It has to do with the item providing direction to staff. And that is to provide council the ability to form any questions or gather any additional information on the matter prior to the meeting. So that's where I'm coming for on this. And I heard our CEO comment at the time that it wouldn't be a staff report, it would be a briefing note, which is fine. For my own purposes, as I say, I would just like to know what it is and have an opportunity to think about it and get more information if it's required. And so what I wanted to propose, and I guess the other question is, when would this briefing note be available? And from my own perspective, any time before the meeting would be helpful. So this is what I scribbled down here, and this is, I guess if this is a motion, I'm not sure, but anyway, here it goes. Unless it is not feasible, the CAO to provide a briefing note to council prior to an in-camera meeting. And that would be in lieu, well, that would be added, I guess, to notice of meetings as 8.3. So I would have to have a second for that, I guess.
Through the chair, I'm just a little unclear on what the amendment is. Could you read that out again?
Yeah. Unless it is not feasible, the CAO to provide a briefing note to council prior to an in-camera meeting.
So if I may, I'm going to turn to the CAO. I believe I understand what you're requesting, Councillor Hamlin. The concern with anything in camera has always been both prior to, during, and after the level of confidentiality. Can a briefing note be provided in advance that would provide some, I guess, flavor as to what the conversation will be without concerns of confidentiality or lack thereof?
Thank you. just by way of background, I should preface my comment by saying that I think I understand Councillor Hamlin's concern, and I think it is reasonable to provide members of council with some indication of what the item is on the agenda so that they can come prepared. I think that's a reasonable request. The issue is how far in advance can we have that information available to council, and secondly, in what format we can have that information available, recognizing that in many cases the information needs to be kept confidential. So I don't have any real concerns with providing information to members of council on in-camera items. I have to think about what medium we use to provide that information. And I'd be concerned about enshrining something in a bylaw that says we need a briefing note. I mean, I'm the one who suggested a briefing note because I think that's a reasonable way of communicating what the item is. But again, that information would have to be secured, and we can try and make arrangements to have that those security provisions. So I have no concern with the principle of the amendment, if I can use that term. What I'd like us to do is give staff some more flexibility on the format of how we transmit that information to council, because it could be, I can send an email, for example, to staff using a password protected email to say, here is what the item is going to be dealing with as much information as I can at that time, because an item going in camera means it has some sense of urgency, and secondly, it is going in camera because there's a heightened sense of confidentiality allowed by the Municipal Act. So having said all of that, I think what I would prefer is to have some flexibility to be able to have some discretion in providing that information to council in the format that I deem to be appropriate. So, but I think it's a reasonable request, and I think what we just have to find out now is how do we get that information to you in a way that is meaningful and provide you with the heads up that you're seeking.
Okay.
Well, that's fine with me. If staff would like time to consider this and bring it back, I'm content with that, if that's what's being suggested.
Well, I'm going to just ask the clerk, so if it's staff's going to consider and come back with something, then that would be then an amendment at a future time to what we're passing tonight, potentially.
Unless this gets deferred, correct?
May I offer, oh, sorry.
I'm just going to jump ahead, sorry, go ahead.
So rather than, council is supreme, and I guess council will decide how to deal with this item. My suggestion would be not to defer the item, but perhaps to amend the motion to give the CEO the flexibility to provide council with as much information as is feasible prior to the beginning of the in-camera meeting, without specifying the format nor a time frame.
Sorry, Alan?
I'm happy with that.
Before I ask if you've got a second, or I should have prefaced my comments as it relates to security that it was not intended for an individual or the member of council. Accidents happen, and we are given a confidential envelope that contains sensitive information, and it is our responsibility to ensure that remains confidential. So, just so that people are aware. Do you have a seconder for that amendment then, Councillor Hamlin? Councillor Doherty, would you?
Second that.
Okay. Are there any questions before I call the vote on the amendment? Do you have wording for that amendment? Sorry. Councillor Jeffrey?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just for wording, I voted against the proposed amendment at the SIC meeting because I really think that what I heard there is that staff give their best efforts. I don't need to enshrine that in anything. It's in the CAO's best interest that council understand as best they can the item he's bringing. There's no advantage to him not to get it as soon as possible. So I didn't really find it necessary to enshrine it out. I'm going to vote against the amendment for that reason.
Before I ask if anybody else has any other questions, I'm just going to turn to the clerk. What is the exact language that we're gonna use, if I may?
Through your chair, this is what I have right now through the discussions. So it would be added to the in-camera session on the agendas that unless it is not feasible that the CAO provide a briefing note in a form to be determined to council prior to an in-camera meeting.
Councillor Hamlin, is that the wording that you were looking at?
I think I heard CAO amend suggest something a little broader than that. And I had written down, and maybe I'm gonna ask him if he can remember, but something along the lines of that the CAO have flexibility in providing briefing information to council prior to the meetings. I think it said more than that.
Well, I mean, we can choose the word flexibility, latitude. I'm looking for directions to what's the best language we could.
My apologies, I've been trying to review the
No, no.
bylaw as you guys were speaking, so it's a little bit difficult for me because this is my item on the agenda at the same time as I'm trying to clerk the meeting. So I guess the recommendation would be that
Please.
sorry?
Please.
Absolutely.
So what I would suggest is that if there is a need to modify or amend the original motion put forward by Councillor Hamlin, we could say something to the effect that the CEO will provide as much information as possible to council prior to the in-camera meeting. I would want to say something about confidentiality in there to say that within the provisions of the Municipal Act, the CEO will provide as much information as possible to council prior to the commencement of the in-camera session.
So through the chair, I don't know if this would work, that the CEO will provide as much information as possible to council prior to the commencement of the in-camera session pending privacy and confidentiality requirements.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Doherty?
Oh, no, my hand had been up to.
No, I'm just asking, you're still comfortable as a seconder?
Yes.
On that, perfect, okay. Are there any other questions or comments specific to this? Okay, then I'm gonna call the vote. Those who are in favor of the amendment proposed by Councillor Hamlin and seconded by Councillor Doherty, all those in favor? Those who are opposed? It's defeated. So I'm gonna go back to the original motion that was on the table by myself and seconded by Councillor Berman. Are there any further questions? Councillor Doherty.
Thank you. At the SIC meeting, I expressed a concern relative to the recommendations how general consent agenda items should be pulled. And I certainly appreciate that it is useful to provide council and staff some notice in advance that the particular member is intending to pull an item. However, I take exception to the phrasing that this item would be vetted. I do not believe that staff should be vetting any potential policy issue before it goes to the council table. Council will decide whether the request or the comment or the position is valid or not, in whether they support the recommendation of the individual who has pulled an item. Sorry, I'm not explaining that very well. But I feel very strongly that we need to have the flexibility to say what's on our mind and express our position without in any way being influenced.
So noted.
So I feel strongly enough about this that I would not support that particular recommendation. However, I do not want to vote against the entire report, so I'm wondering if this particular item could be severed.
Yep, please.
Through the chair to Councillor Doherty, if you review the draft bylaw that was provided, that wording has been taken out. So the last paragraph reads, notice is to be provided to the CO and or clerk 24 hours in advance of a meeting if a member of council wishes to pull an item from the consent correspondence agenda for further direction. So that wording's been removed from the draft bylaw that's before you.
Okay, my apologies, I was lifting this from the staff report. Okay, my apologies, I take it all back.
It's okay. So it's on page 11 of 13 within this particular, page 11 of 13 is what I'm looking at.
That was the original staff recommendation, so if you look at the bylaw.
This is the one.
On page 75 of the agenda.
Okay, so
Okay, I
that's
see
it
it.
though, you're
I
okay.
see it, yes,
Okay,
my
perfect.
apologies.
Okay, so if there are, yes, Councillor Hamlin.
I have a second matter I wanted
Sorry,
to
you did
raise.
say that, yeah,
Yeah.
please.
I have a question through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, to the clerk. In terms of the meeting calendar, I take it that the option that we're looking at for approval is the one that has council meetings the last 2 Mondays of the month. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Hamlin, that's correct, yes. So that's noted as option 2 on the top of that calendar, which is what's in the recommendation.
So, for myself and others who are on the Development and Operations Committee, it means, if I'm reading this correctly, you could just tell me that every week I would have a council meeting.
No.
Like, this is how I'm reading it, so I just need some help. So what I'm seeing is the first week of the month is set aside for an SIC meeting, is that correct?
Through the
Like
chair
on a Wednesday?
to Councillor Hamlin, that yes, as a tentative meeting, just to have a target date for staff when they need to bring stuff forward for council, and for you to have something in your calendar should, we need the meeting and I'm not.
And because where I'm coming from on this, and is I recognize, because the way I read this is every week I have a council meeting, which, except for August. Because the first week is reserved for the SIC meeting, the second week is my committee meeting, the third and fourth week are the council meetings. Which I'm not opposed to having meetings every week, but I didn't see anything built in here. For example, if, I don't know, I want to visit my sister in March for 2 weeks who's in Georgia, I have to miss 2 meetings, which is, then I'm pushing up against missing 3 meetings, and I guess I could be voted off the vote. So I'm just sort of wondering if any consideration has been built into this, or if it could be to accommodate that.
Go ahead and then I'll come back.
Just to clarify on the absent of meetings, it's per the committee that you're appointed to, right? So if you miss 3 consecutive council meetings or 3 consecutive standing committee meetings, it's not them in total.
I was just going to comment that we've had past councillors that have been away for extended period of time. I can think of one that sat where you were, Councillor Doherty, sat where I was prior. And, so, we have lives. And so your comment is valid. And if there's a 2-week period that somebody would like to be away because an opportunity presents itself, I don't think any of us should feel that we can't take advantage of that.
Thank you.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to confirm with the acting clerk there were a couple amendments that went out on Tuesday that aren't necessarily reflected in our agenda package here, and I just want to make sure they've been captured, in particular 6.8, unanimous decisions of matters discussed at a standing committee as opposed to unanimous decisions in favor of a matter.
Through the chair to Councillor Jeffrey, thanks for reminding me about that. So I misunderstood your intent for your amendment on the unanimous decisions when considering the standing committee items in a consent agenda format. So I have noted in an email that went out to everyone that that recommendation has been changed to unanimous decisions of a matter discussed at a standing committee, removing the words in favor. And Councillor Doherty noted that in the draft agenda I missed changing the appointment to the other committees to 2 years.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there are no other questions then, I am going to call to the question the original motion that was tabled a few minutes ago. All those in favor? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, next. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Berman, be it resolved that bylaw number 2019-075, being a bylaw to govern the proceedings of council, standing committees, and the other committees of boards and council be enacted and passed this 13th day of November 2019. Are there any questions before I call the vote? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? It's passed unanimously. Next, it's moved by me and seconded by Councillor Berman. Whereas the Strategic Initiatives Standing Committee directed staff to undertake public consultation prior to the final consideration of the proposed lobbyist registry program for the town of Collingwood, be it resolved that staff report C 2019-08, implementation of a lobbyist registry, be received for information, and that staff report back to council on December 16, 2019 with findings of the public consultation and draft lobbyist registry and code of conduct for consideration, and to enact and pass such bylaw at that time should it be appropriate. Are there any questions or comments regarding this one? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Next is moved by me, seconded by Councillor Berman, be it resolved that council receive staff report C 2019-09, annual report of non-standard and emergency purchases for information. Are there any questions, comments regarding this one? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Next, bylaw. Enforcement, moved by me and seconded by Councillor Berman, be it resolved that the council receive staff report P 2019-35 entitled Bylaw Enforcement Policy, and the council directs staff to implement the bylaw enforcement policy contained in this report, and the council endorse the service level matrix and to direct staff to implement, and the council endorse the development and customer service performance measures and benchmarks as they relate to the acknowledgement of a complaint, first attendance action as they relate to specific types of complaint, and associated response to the complaint so that the service level expectations are clearly established, and that staff return to council with reports speaking to issues, options, possible future direction, and resource requirements regarding short-term accommodation. Any questions, comments related to this one? Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you very much. Just a quick question through you, Deputy Mayor, to the CAO. Do we have a little bit of an idea of the timing of the short-term accommodation report coming back to council? I know it's going to be complicated and in-depth, but I'm just wondering about the timing of that, given the pressures of and the things that are going on in terms of short-term.
Thank you. I'll ask Director Ford to respond to that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Councillor Jeffrey. This is an item that we're working on with the bylaw enforcement group, with the CBO Miller. But it's also something that we're considering and wrapping into the official plan review and looking to do that concurrently. So I think in the interim, we're likely to return most likely in January with some sort of a scoping discussion report, and then pursue the matter further throughout the OP review. and take any additional steps as might be necessary.
Please.
Thank you. And then additionally, I just wanted to announce for people, I know in this instance, I constantly bring up the fact that by making the neighbors the bad guys, we're making it very difficult. But there may be individuals out there who are really worried for themselves or afraid of their neighbor in terms of that. And I did speak with our CBO, Miller, and he did advise me that under health and safety, they can pursue those complaints without the names of the complainants. So people should feel very comfortable that they can engage that information somehow through either us or the town and have it followed up in the meantime while we wait for things in the STAs to get more defined.
If I may, Councillor Jeffrey, that is an excellent point. Not unlike if a person is contacting the police, I mean, they have the right to remain anonymous when filing that complaint for their protection, so absolutely. And we actually have, and if I may, through to Director Farr, I was actually in an arena on the weekend, and I was approached by a resident where, in fact, our CBO was involved and closed down an STA recently. So thank you, it's nice to hear, because it is an issue. Okay, any questions, any further questions specific? I will call the vote then, or question. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Mr. Berman, this is it, we're done. Moved by me and seconded by Councillor Berman, be it resolved that the Council received the Strategic Initiative Standing Committee report from its meeting held October 31, 2019 as presented. Any questions? Call the vote, all those in favor? Passed unanimously, thank you. So, with that said, page, I'm missing a page. 1, 2. Sorry, moving on to Corporate Community Services Standing Committee from November the 4th. Sir, Councillor Down again.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. I love how you had the suspense there to keep everybody at home on their toes.
I wish I could call it suspense.
It was good, buddy. It was really good. And, first and foremost, I want to thank you for coming to sit through our committee and taking the spot of our mayor while he was away. You brought a lot of insight and a lot of different questions, so thank you very much for doing that. It was a good time. So, 11.1, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Comey, be it resolved that Council receive the following committee and board minutes and approve the recommendations contained therein. That was the Collingwood Downtown BI Board of Management minutes for October 10th, 2019, Trails Advisory Committee minutes for October 9th, 2019, Museum Advisory Committee minutes October 17th and 24th, 2019, and the recommendation therein of October 24th that Council approve the Museum Strategic Master Plan as presented.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. Those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Staff reports.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Comey. Be it resolved that staff report CC 2019-02 be received and a letter of support be provided to the provincial governments of Ontario Trillium Foundation OTF for an application in collaboration with Georgian Bay Forever called Divert and Capture. The fight to keep microfibers / plastics out of our water, for the microplastics filtration from washing machines, public education and water testing portions of the work, and further, upon approval of the funding of the Ontario Trillium Federation, that the town work with the Georgian Bay Forever to refine our collaborative supports such as town communications and other ways we can align activities, and that the goals and provide the applicable town support outlined in the final pages of the attached request from Georgian Bay Forever with temporary office space for one Georgian Bay Forever staff provided on best effort basis when available.
Thank you. I'd just like to comment that this is an excellent opportunity. It was an excellent presentation, and I'm hopeful that our Executive Director Skinner will be successful in securing the funding for this particular program or opportunity. So, are there any other questions, comments? Councillor Doherty.
Thank you. I'll just share that the Blue Mountain Watershed Trust Foundation has also sent a letter of support to the Ontario Trillium Fund.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. With that said, all those in favor? And that's carried unanimously.
Moving on, moved by myself, second by Councillor McLeod, be it resolved that staff report PRC 2019-16 be received and the council directs staff to develop a design for the Pretty River Parkway mediums that reduces the garden area of the mediums to a size that can be managed effectively with less risk to staff by virtue of less time spent in areas of high traffic volume.
Thank you. Are there any questions, comments regarding this particular one? Councillor Doherty?
Thank you, Your Deputy Worship. I have already actually directed a question to Director Culver, and it was regarding the fact that there were no pictures or drawings to suggest what was, or to illustrate what was actually being proposed. And because of the importance of this particular meridian as a entranceway to our community, I was quite concerned that we didn't really have any idea as to what specifically was being proposed, what it would look like. And it was explained to me that we will receive some renderings when this is approved, and that we will have an opportunity to make comment on that.
Thank you. So just to clarify, we also have the correspondence to and from, so at this point you're good with the response from the director?
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay. Thank you. Point taken then. Any other, Councillor Hamlin?
Thank you. Yes, I just have a comment and then a question through
Please.
you to the Director of Engineering Public Works. So I'm in support of the recommendation, and I appreciate Councillor Doherty's additional comments. I notice here the comment that the Pretty River Parkway medians are unique in terms of narrowness of dimensions and their location within a very busy traffic corridor that's challenged by the volume and speed of traffic. And I just wanted to comment that I have crossed that median a few times because I tend to walk everywhere with my dog. And it is very dangerous there. And I believe that the reason a lot of it is a lot of traffic just traveling through Collingwood. As opposed to our own residents. Of course, some of it is our own residents, but a lot of people are just trying to get through Collingwood to the other side. So my question is whether this stretch could be looked at in the traffic calming study that I know staff's going to be working on at some point in the new year.
Well, as the Parkway is part of Highway 26, I'll ask the Director McDonald to maybe comment.
Certainly, our traffic calming policies, we'll look at the various procedures in terms of road classes. It's not normally something that you would look at in terms of a collector or highway road where you implement traffic calming measures such as speed bumps, etc. But there may be other alternatives in terms of visual effects that may create an atmosphere where traffic can slow down. Another option would be we can put one of our speed signs up there on a rotating basis. The your speed type sign is another option that we could look at.
Okay, that would be great. I think I totally appreciate we wouldn't want speed bumps there, and I'll leave it to staff to consider what might be appropriate. It it has struck me that if people had to drive the speed limit along there, maybe some of them would be encouraged to take the so-called temporary bypass, where they can go a bit faster. Thank you.
Fair enough. Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask the question then. All those in favor? And that's passed unanimously.
Eleven point two point three, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Comey, be it resolved that staff report PRC 2019-17 be received and that council authorize the strategy for project completion as indicated in this report.
Are there any questions or comments before I call the vote? Councillor Coleman?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to Director Culver, I guess it would make sense to ask if Ms. Parker was successful in getting the grant application in on the 12th.
Director Culver?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, yes, it was submitted actually on the 11th in the evening.
That's awesome. Congratulations. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay. Seeing none then, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? That's passed unanimously.
Eleven point two point four, Sunset Point Playground Update, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Comey, be it resolved that staff report PRC 2019-18 be received and that council authorize the strategy for project completion as indicated in this report.
Are there any questions or comments then related to Sunset Point? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? That's passed unanimously. Last one, sir.
Yes. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Comey, be it resolved that council receive the Corporate and Community Services Standing Committee report from its meeting held November 4th, 2019 as presented.
Any questions? Yes, sir.
Just a comment on the committee that night. It was it really showed the community how much Parks and Rec and Culture has on their plate on a weekly, monthly, daily basis of all the fantastic projects that are going on in the community, and the feedback from everyone in the community. I'm really impressed with the way that the town of Collingwood staff have given them ample time to be able to have their say as they will, and really give us a lot of great opportunities. Sunset Point Park is really exciting. It's nice to see the multi-use court down there, and then all the other great things that we're doing down there to drive people down to the waterfront. So it was a well-informed meeting, and we had some really good public feedback. So thank you for all the committee members, and again, thank you for taking part in the committee. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your comments. If there are no other comments or questions, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that's passed unanimously. We have no staff reports this evening, I assume, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Motions, we have one motion tonight. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and I would like to speak to it first, if that's okay.
Certainly.
Moved by me and seconded by Councillor Doherty, be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Collingwood supports efforts to develop a never-forgotten national memorial, and so advises MP Terry Dowdall, MPP Jim Wilson, Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and all municipalities in Ontario. And my very brief comment would be that the motion's worded in a specific way that we are not speaking to a location or a build type. We are simply supporting the concept of that memorial.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions, comments around the table? Okay, seeing none, then I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? So noted. Bylaws. We have none. We have a couple of notices of motion, I believe. Is that correct? Councillor Jeffrey, you have one or two? One, and Councillor McLeod, you've got one. Councillor Jeffrey, you've got the honor.
Thank you. Whereas the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, FCM, and ICLEI, Local Governments of Sustainability, that being International Council for Local Environment Initiatives, have established the Partners for Climate Protection, PCP, program to provide a forum for municipal governments to share their knowledge and experience with other municipal governments on how to reduce GHG emissions. And whereas over 350 municipal governments across Canada, representing more than 65% of the population, have already committed to reducing corporate and community GHG emissions through the PCP program since its inception in 1994. And whereas the PCP program is based on a 5-milestone framework that involves completing a GHG inventory and forecast, setting a GHG reduction target, developing a local action plan, implementing the plan, and monitoring progress and reporting results. Be it resolved that the municipality of the town of Collingwood review the guidelines on Partners for Climate Protection Program member benefits and responsibilities, and then communicate to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and the International Council for Local Environment Initiatives Canada, ICLEI Canada, its participation in the PCP program and its commitment to achieving the milestones set out in the PCP 5-milestone framework. And be it further resolved that the town of Collingwood appoint 1 corporate staff person and 1 elected official to oversee the implementation of the PCP milestones and be the points of contact for the PCP program within the town of Collingwood. And if I could just also comment, Deputy Mayor, that the acting clerk did send out a link to the background information that we can all review.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McLeod, you had pulled 2 items on the consent agenda. You said you'd come back to them. I'm going to guess you're aligned with 8.4. You're on. Let's go.
I apologize for the 8 whereases that are included in this motion. It's my first time writing a motion. Whereas the town of Collingwood has recently declared a climate emergency, and whereas the town of Collingwood has committed to 9 core principles of sustainability, and whereas the town of Collingwood is a beneficiary of the upstream environmental remediation work done by the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority, and whereas the town of Collingwood is a member of the NVCA with representation on its board of directors, and whereas under the direction of that board of directors, the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority provides programs and services addressing local priorities to the residents of Collingwood and its other member municipalities, including inclusive outdoor education and recreation, water quality monitoring, preservation of species at risk, as well as protecting life and property through a variety of measures. And whereas the NVCA provides the town of Collingwood with expert advice on the environmental impact of land use planning proposals, and that the municipality does not have staff with comparable expertise or experience. And whereas the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks provides approximately 1% of the budget for programs and services currently delivered by the NVCA. Therefore, be it resolved that the town of Collingwood supports Conservation Authority regulations under Bill 108 being completed in consultation with the NVCA and Conservation Ontario, and that the town of Collingwood supports continuation of the programs and services endorsed by the NVCA's Board of Directors, and that the Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks continue to allow local municipalities' designated representatives to determine which programs will be delivered and mandatory, along with the use of a board-directed fair municipal levy as per current regulation. And that this resolution be forwarded to the Minister of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, Premier Doug Ford, MPP Jim Wilson, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority, Conservation Ontario, and all Ontario municipalities.
Well written, well read. Councillor Jeffrey, you only have 3 whereases. Would you like to revise or edit yours before we...
In all honesty, I could have used the first 3 of Councillor McLeod's whereases as well, so they do for both.
Okay, thank you both. These will come back on the 16th of December, or sorry, 25th of November.
I don't have to read the whole thing again, do I?
Absolutely. Okay. County report. I don't have a county report that's in depth, other than the fact it's Wednesday, so I don't have anything to talk about as it relates to garbage. But well, I will pass this along. At the county, we are having some challenges. They have been well documented by the information that we're receiving through electronic communication. The media has done an excellent job in terms of communicating some information. I think our staff's done an excellent job in terms of complementing what the county is doing in conveying the challenges that we're having. What I will say is that those challenges will not go away in the foreseeable future. And when I say foreseeable future, I think we're talking about 18 months to 2 years. So the county is looking at a number of things to try and be proactive and reactive at the same time to correct the immediate problem. The problem is that waste and organics and recycling are not being picked up on a consistent basis. As it relates to the town of Collingwood, we actually are doing relatively well, in fact way better than in some other areas within the county, and so the impact hasn't been as maybe felt to the same degree as it has to the south of us in other communities. That said, it will be an ongoing issue, and I know that the county is certainly very apologetic. Staff are working very hard, and they'll do their very best to rectify the situation, but it is going to be a long process. That said, I would ask that those in the community who have not and who are tech savvy, they take the opportunity to download the Simcoe County app as it relates to waste collection. It is fantastic. If nothing else, it will tell you when your street has or hasn't been picked up, and so you're not wondering if they're coming back the very next day to pick up your garbage. The other thing that I would mention of the county is that the budget was passed on Tuesday. Councillor McLeod was with me last Thursday when staff gave the overview, and then on Tuesday it was brought forward to council for discussion. It was passed, and I'll have further comment as it relates to the numbers and some of the impacts that it will have to the municipality at a future date. Do you have anything to add to that?
No.
So with that, I will then move to council business, old or deferred business. Does anybody have anything that is old or deferred? Seeing none, other business. Sorry, do you have your hand up? Okay. I'm going to ask, this afternoon there was communication that came out from Director Culver as it relates to Sunset Point, and I'm going to turn to my left to the CAO to provide comment on that, if you would.
Thank you. I'll let Director Culver go into the detail. I just wanted to preface his comments by saying that this is an issue that we thought it would be useful to bring council up to speed on, and we are going to bring a more fulsome report back to council through Development and Operations Committee potentially next Monday. This is an emergency that could require some fiscal impact, and before we get too far down that road, I thought it would be prudent to let council know that this is happening and that staff are making every effort to try and prevent any health and safety concerns that residents or members of council might have, and that if there are any fiscal implications for this, we'll bring it back to council for your approval, recognizing that this is something that would need your immediate attention, and we're also hoping to develop a communication strategy to deal with the impact of what happened over the last few days between now and when council decides to take action, if any. So I'll ask Director Culver to provide with a bit more details, and then we'll take some questions.
Thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor, I did send out an email this afternoon that gave some of the broad strokes. Since October 17th, we've been working with an engineering firm, Tatham Engineering, and their shoreline engineer specifically to gather information regarding what are the impacts of what's happened, plus what should we do in the short term and long term. In the meantime, we were hit again on October 31st and November 1st with another substantial weather event, which took even more property off of Sunset Point. I do have some images that I kind of roughly threw into Adam Ferguson's file over there. I'm not sure, it was sort of last minute, so he may or may not be able to gather them, but I'll just, oh, there we go. So this is just a rough estimate of what kind of property we've lost in one section of Sunset Point. There are at least 3 or 4 impacted sections, and what's threatening is not even, I mean, the loss of land is somewhat dramatic, but what's worse is that Essentially, there's been a softening of the shoreline. That's the before picture. A softening of the shoreline that basically makes us very vulnerable to any new weather event. So another November storm, even if we get to spring, with a damaged spring usually brings some weather events as well. So it is threatening a significant piece of property, and we can expect there to be a sort of an exacerbation as time goes by and the ground continually gets softened. The engineer has sort of indicated a value of about $250,000 to remediate, put the proper remnants in place to protect the most vulnerable pieces of the shoreline. It's not a complete solution. It will protect what has been lost and is most vulnerable currently, but it doesn't preclude other remnants having to be installed at a future time. We are also placing a value of about $50,000 to repair the grounds once machinery and whatnot have been placed on it in order to accomplish the work. So the total is around $300,000 that we're looking at to put the protections in place and prevent further loss of property. I have reached out to the MMAH. I had a conversation as late as 4 o'clock this afternoon. This was on the advice of CAO Min, and we've basically come to understand that we don't meet the threshold for their municipal disaster assistance program, that we were far short of the minimum value for damage before they can put their protocols in place. They have given me some other suggestions, and we'll continue to pursue any other alternative sources of funding that might support the repairs, but at this time we're basically left to our own devices to work on this solution. I should also mention that the MVCA has been apprised from day one as well. We've kept them in the loop about what we're doing. They've been generally supportive, and then again, as late as today, I've sent over the engineering reports and potentials for what we might be doing to create remedies there.
Thank you, Director. Do you add anything further?
No, just to say that the numbers that the director outlined are tentative at best. So, we're going to hopefully form those numbers up, but it is the fiscal impact based on what we know. So, just want to make sure that members of council understand the caveat there with the numbers.
Okay. Are there any questions around the table, Councillor Hamlin?
Yes, thank you. Through you to Director Culver. I know that communities and landowners all the way to Meaford have been complaining about loss of shoreline because of these same two events. And I'm just wondering if you've had an opportunity to have a look at the rest of our public shoreline in Collingwood, and whether there's any remediation needed there.
So through you, Deputy Mayor, yeah, we have, for a few years now, we've been watching the effect of the high water levels on our shoreline. There's definitely been other areas that are affected by the high water level. We've been doing the best we can to sort of backfill and put some, admittedly short-term remedies in place, hoping, quite honestly, that the water levels go down because we know it's a direct relationship. It's not on our radar right now to do more than what we've been doing, because quite honestly, those repairs are exceptionally expensive. It's very, very expensive. And they also have, they could have some far-reaching impacts on things like shoreline habitat and whatnot in terms of creating those remedies. So we're just cautiously, we're monitoring, we're cautiously remediating as we go, and we're working on basically on a code of patience.
Just one comment, if I could add. I raise this in the context of if there's a threshold that we need to establish to qualify for the grant money. Perhaps it's worth a view at the rest of our decimated shoreline, because maybe we would reach the threshold. So I just wanted to make that comment.
No, I think I was going to say that we have actually looked at at what else is happening in the municipality, and we've actually had discussions as well with our neighbors regarding impact. And unfortunately, I don't think we would qualify even using that larger threshold or larger landmass. But Director Culver has had extensive conversations with MMAH to try and see what, if any, assistance they can provide. So we're still working at it, but if you look at the criteria established by the ministry, we wouldn't qualify. But we're looking at if there's any latitude in the interpretation of those provisions.
Councillor McLeod.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Director Culver. I understand, if I remember my history, that the Inukshuk was a donation to the town in memoriam. Have we been in contact with the donor to discuss with them what has happened, what Mother Nature has wrought?
So actually through you, Deputy Mayor, I'll refer to the Deputy Mayor because he actually helped him in contact with the donor family and to keep them apprised of what's going on and how we're managing our way through the situation.
Thank you. Yes, I know the donor family, so we've been in contact with them. When it was brought to our attention that we had some structural issues, I wanted them to know that we had some challenges prior to our friends in the media and our own public relations putting it out there. So they're aware, and we're keeping them apprised as we move forward.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other? And sorry, Mr. CAO, my understanding is that we're going to have further information coming forward on Monday night at the development operation meeting.
Yeah, that's our plan, is to bring forward a more fulsome report to DNO. We're hoping that between now and then, we may have additional information from the engineering report and also some additional information on financial impact and perhaps the final word from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing as to whether or not you would qualify for a disaster relief assistance program.
Excellent. If there are no other questions specific to that, Councillor Coney, did you have your hand up about something else? Or?
I get a lot of conflict. Notice for other business.
Well, we're at other business, so you're up. Okay.
Thank you so much. I know we normally save our warm and fuzzies for the community and corporate services, but I'd really like to call attention to some fantastic customer service efforts. That's what I think they were as it relates to the Hamilton Drain crosswalk opening. Within moments of it opening, Director McDonald was on site, and we came to realize that cars simply were not stopping, were potentially unaware or unused to seeing it, and he and the Public Works team provided an immediate response to try to assist with the situation, and I'm sure everyone has noticed those flashing signs that were placed at either end of the crossing. Executive Director Skinner and Mr. Ferguson looped in and jumped on getting notices out to the schools before end of day so that they would let students know that their crosswalk was working. The OPP got looped in. Public Works also had their own volunteer out there at the crossing, although I wonder if she was just sent there to stop me from yelling at the cars. And I think we've really done a wonderful job of getting information out to the community. Bylaw Officer Adam also came by all through the week. Ms. Parker tweeted out some how-to videos that were shared with us by active transportation modes to school. And I do know, though, residents have had some questions and that Director McDonald is working on some possible tweaks to the crossing that he might like to share with us tonight.
Thank you. Director McDonald.
Yes, the crosswalk was implemented early last week, and it's new to the municipality, and I think it's noteworthy that these type of crosswalks are new to the province. The province introduced 4 different standards of crosswalks in 2016, and this is one of the new standards. It is, you will notice them going up around the province. I was driving around the county on the weekend and noticed 2 of them. So more and more drivers will become used to them, similar to roundabouts. When roundabouts first started, drivers were not familiar with their responsibilities and how to use them. Now that more communities are introducing this type of crosswalk, drivers must be aware that it's their responsibility to stop at a crosswalk, and regardless of the style or type, this is one of 4 different types, and they should stop for pedestrians and wait until they complete their crossing. They're required by law to wait till pedestrians complete their crossing before they can advance. And pedestrians should also, it's a learning curve for them too as well. They need to be aware of their surroundings and aware that they have a responsibility to stop. There is some slight tweaking that we have to do with this particular one, that the installation meets current standards, but I think we can improve them, and we're going to move one of the signs closer to the road so it's more visible. And I think it's just a matter of getting the message out there that this is a crosswalk and you're responsible to stop at it, because you will see them more often. If it's not in Collingwood, you'll see them in other communities, because I see them myself on the weekend.
Great. Well, thank you, Councillor Comey. You've been out in the cold, helping out in terms of supporting our team in terms of making people aware of the new crosswalk. And as a reference point, for those who don't know where the Hamilton Drain is, it is south of Stanley Street and north of Poplar Side Road. So, and it is key because we've got 2 schools to the west, and not including the high school, and then we've got Admiral to the east. So lots of children in the area. Is there any other business? Yes, Councillor Hamilton.
Just briefly, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I took the opportunity last Thursday and Friday to attend a conference in Toronto, and I'm not going to go over all the highlights of it, that would be too boring, but there's just a couple of things that I wanted to mention that I found interesting. First of all, it was at the Evergreen Brickworks, and there's an organization that's set up there called Future Cities Canada. And it's a collaboration with Evergreen and the McConnell Foundation, the TD Bank Group, Maison de l'Innovation, and the Community Foundations of Canada. And this was the 2nd year they've had a conference, and I didn't really know what to expect, so I thought, well, what the heck, I'll just, get myself down there. The idea behind Future Cities Canada is to, and I'll just read the first sentence on their web page. We are embarking on an historic moment for cities in Canada, a moment of transformative change full of new ideas, new technologies, and new opportunities for public participation. Canada needs a collaborative infrastructure where we can work together to create better cities that benefit all of us. I have to say the most interesting thing was, the first day of the conference, I was the oldest person there, hands down, by at least 20 years. It was stuffed full of hundreds of young people in their 20s and 30s. The second day, I would say people of my age group were maybe 5%, maybe 10% of our students. And it really got me thinking about, what we're seeing in our community here, and I know we want to encourage more youthful, collaboration, because these young people were from all different fields, all different agencies, organizations, and they had tons of ideas. Everything from, I attended a workshop on how universities now are making the students available for businesses and governments who have problems to solve. These were all master's students, and these kids couldn't wait to get into municipalities. And the subway was down the first day of the conference, and I ended up in a workshop talking about access to the brickworks. They used us for their master planning. Anyway, don't get me started. But anyway, the interesting thing, of the 6 people in this little workshop group table, 3 of them walked. Okay, they were all younger than me, so I already described the demographics. But they walked for 40 or 45 minutes. 2 of them had an idea, which was, it would be a lot easier to get here if there was a bike sharing destination at the brickworks. And I just give these as examples because I think that, you know, people under the age of 50 look at life differently and have different things that are important to them. And I think it will behoove us as a community to keep that in mind as we sit here making decisions and to make sure that we consult broadly. And the last thing I just wanted to mention was, unlike AMO, because I went to that conference, as many of us did, at the end of the summer, which really was speaking a lot to examples of things that happened on Ontario and issues and so on. We heard from people from Liverpool, Mexico City, Pittsburgh, Akron, Ohio, Memphis, and the Parkdale community. Just really, anyway, I encourage people to look online, check this Future Cities Canada out, and that was all I wanted to say.
That's great, thank you. It is exciting for our community. I had an opportunity to have a coffee with Councillor Comey about a week ago next door, and I think I was the oldest by about 15 within the room. So the demographics and the perception is that we are a community of those who are moving from the GTA or Toronto or elsewhere to active retirement, and yet when I look at the community, we've got a really burgeoning, growing youth filled with entrepreneurship, and it's very, very exciting. In fact, there's an event tonight over at the Simcoe Street speaking to that very subject. So exciting things are happening here in Collingwood for sure. On that note, we have nothing for in camera. Who would have the confirmatory bylaw then?
Okay, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Berman. He has to sign his name. Okay. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2019-076, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the regular meeting of council held November 13, 2019, be enacted and passed this 13th day of November 2019.
Okay, as that comes forward, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. I look down to my right. Councillor Jeffrey for the adjournment. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.